Welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section we're going to look at zoom and pan. If you've used those in an earlier version of PSE, then you can probably skip this section. We're particularly going to look at zoom in expert mode. So currently I have expert mode selected. Let's look at using zoom on this particular image. First thing to point out is that there is a zoom tool in the toolbox. It's top left. Select that tool. Note that the tool options are currently shown. On the left of the tool options we have a way of choosing either zoom in or zoom out. If I click the zoom in tool, all I then need to do is to click somewhere on the image, say one of the headlamps there, click there and it'll zoom in a little more each time that I click. Similarly, if I select zoom out, click somewhere, it'll zoom out as well. I have a zoom slider in the tool options. And then over on the right, I have 4 presets. I have a 1:1 preset, which is the same as zooming to actual pixels. I have a fit screen preset, which is basically the setting that we had just now. And in this setting, you're basically using as much of the main window as possible, but are able to see the whole picture. Fill screen literally will fill the whole of the available space in the window, which in this case, because of the aspect ratio of the image, means that you don't see the whole image. And then you also have a setting here which will show the image according to the current default print resolution. Now there are equivalents of these on the view menu. So you have zoom in, zoom out, fit on screen, actual pixels and print size. Notice that each of these has a keyboard shortcut, and many people, including me, use those zoom in shortcuts. Control and equals to zoom in, control and minus to zoom out. So I'd suggest that you try each of those zoom settings and try the zoom in and zoom out with keyboard shortcuts if you can. You saw just now how to zoom in towards a particular point in an image. If there's a part of an image that you want to work on, clearly you could use zoom in successively to get to that. But there's also a very useful technique. Make sure you have zoom in selected. And then with the mouse, click and hold, you can draw an area on the image, a rectangle like so, and then it will zoom in just directly to that rectangle. So that can be very useful as well. And of course you can zoom out again either by using one of the presets such as fit screen or by successively zooming out. Let me zoom back into an area of the image around those headlamps again. Once you're zoomed in, you may need to pan around an image. There are a couple of ways of doing that. You can use the scroll bars. There's one along the bottom or there's one along the right hand side. Alternatively, next to the zoom tool in the toolbox there is a hand tool, and the hand tool lets you drag the image around. So if you wanted to drag to a particular point, you can use the hand tool for that as well. Let me switch back to the zoom tool and back to fit screen. I pointed out to you once or twice this little control down on the left showing the current zoom percentage. And of course you can see the zoom percentage in the tabs at the top of the window as well. But just keep an eye on that control, because what I'm going to do now is to zoom in as far as I can on this image. I'm going to point somewhere near the middle of it and I'm just going to zoom in successively. There is a limit to how far you can zoom. You know the cursor's got a little plus in the middle of it. When you get to that limit, that plus will go away. And at that point, that's there, the image is now pixelated. You can see every individual pixel in the image. Each pixel has one color, and it's clearly discernible though. You should be able to see individually on your screen each pixel in that image. And that's at 3200% of zoom. If I wanted to go back to a particular zoom level, say I wanted to go back to say 120%. If I enter 120% in that little control, hit the enter key, I'll be back to 120% of zoom. So that's a good way of achieving a particular zoom level. Let me just restore things by going back to fit screen again now. I should point out that if you're using a touch device, zoom and pan is pretty straightforward. If you wanted to zoom in, then you can just use a standard stretch with your fingertips, which is what I'm doing there. And then I could, for instance, tap on the hand on the toolbox, and then I can pan around, dragging the picture around with my fingertip. The buttons, such as the presets for fit screen, work exactly the same in touch as well. Now there's something else that I'd like to show you about working on multiple images, and that is that each of the images that I have open here has its own level of zoom. You can see that from the tabs at the top of the window there, but you can also to a large extent see these images simultaneously if you change one of the preferences for the editor. So if I go into Edit Preferences, go to the General page, one of the options there is Allow Floating Documents in Expert Mode. If I check that and click on OK, and take for example this particular image, click on the header, I can drag it away from the others and it becomes effectively a sort of freestanding window. And I can do the same with any of the others that I want to as well. So I can finish up with windows in which I can see each of the individual images. They could even be windows looking at the same image, so I could be looking at different parts of the same image at once. Now one consequence of this is that when you're using zoom, let me select this particular image here, and I'm currently zooming in. Now I'm zooming out. One of the check boxes down here in the zoom tools is zoom all windows. And if I use that checkbox, let me go to the plus zoom. If I click on plus, I'll zoom in on all of the windows at once. Similarly, if I zoom out, same thing applies. Doesn't matter which one I have selected, they all zoom out. So generally speaking, some people like to work in this mode. You can keep an eye on the other windows, you can bring the one that you want to work on to the front, you can work on that particular window, and then if I've got a particular window that I want to put back with the others tabbed, all I need to do is drag the header in line with the others. It gets tabbed back at the top again. Same with that one, same with that one, and then of course you can easily switch that preference off if you don't want to be able to do that. And note also that on the taskbar to the left of the Organizer button there is a Layout button, and that offers you a number of alternative layouts for the open images. So for instance, if I wanted a rows and columns layout, select that. Although note that each image is still in its own window, so you can still work on the images individually if you want to. And there are about half a dozen different layouts there that you could try. So for instance, the all row layout, but also using the Layout button is a very quick way to get back to the default layout. That's pretty much all you need to know about zoom and pan in expert mode. If I go to quick mode, in quick mode you don't have several images open at once, so you don't have those same options in terms of working on multiple windows. But other than that, you have pretty much the same tool options, and you have an additional zoom slider up here on the right. That's it for this section. I'll see you in the next one.